It's time for another session of the Tool2Type workshop. Let's get started. In the previous lessons, we covered a lot of information, and by now you should have most, if not all, of your hand-lettered characters in their respective glyph cells. In this lesson, I'll show you how you can take derivatives of existing letters to create new characters. I'll show how the use of components make the creation of other characters simple and easy. We'll talk about punctuation and diacritic marks, and we'll discover the importance of good spacing and kerning. I had started a new font and most of the uppercase is incomplete. The caps are actually derived from one of my other fonts called Shalimar. The lowercase are original to this new font. Since Shalimar has more upright forms and it's a bit lighter than this new font, I'll need to make some adjustments to each letter. I can copy the missing uppercase from Shalimar and paste them directly into my new font. Since these glyph cells already exist, I'll first need to delete them. If I don't, glyphs will create additional alternates. Since these caps are a bit small, you'll recall that I can select them and use the transformation function in the filter menu to adjust their size. I'll scale these to 150%, and you can see that they are much closer in size to the first three letters. Now let's take a closer look at the slant and the weight of the new letters. When I compare the B with the E, you can see that I do need to add some weight and adjust the slant to the new forms. I'll take care of the slant first, since I can do that globally. I'll select all the glyphs that need skewing and use the transformation panel to give them a 5-degree skew. Now you can see that the B and the E both have the same slant, which also means that all of the other characters have that slant as well. When I slide this B over the E, you can see what I meant about the weights. I'll need to adjust the weights of the remaining forms so all the caps are consistent with the lowercase, but I won't take the time to do that now. What I will do, however, is show how you can use derivatives from one letter to adjust another, as well as using that derivative to apply it to another. First, let me select and open the B and E glyph cells. I'll copy the stem of the B and paste it into the background of the E. With the stem pasted in the background for reference, I'll return to the front layer. Now I can begin some surgery. I'll select nodes and use the arrow keys to nudge the paths, making the weight of this stem more consistent with the B. And since I have the stem of the B in my clipboard, I'll jump over to the letter T and do a little surgery on it as well. I'm going to remove this stem and replace it with the stem from the B. When you have two overlapping paths, you can merge them into one path by selecting Remove Overlap in the Paths menu, or simply use the keyboard and select Command-Shift-O. As I look at the crossbar on the T, I can see that it's a little light. I could heavy it up by moving nodes around, or I can do what I did with the stem and grab the crossbar on the top of the E and perform a little more surgery. The crossbar on the T needs to be a bit longer than the E, so I'll stretch it out a bit. I can see that the right side bearing needs adjusting, and I can also see that the stem isn't quite in the center of the crossbar. I have a little debris left over from the surgery, so I'll delete that, and now you can see that these forms have become even more consistent. Now let's work with components. I'm not thrilled about this letter G, so I'll open the C and the G and do some editing on this G. I could copy and paste the C into the G cell, but let me show you how I could also use the C as a component. First, I'll swap this G with the background. Then I'll select the Command-Shift-C to place the C component into the cell. Components are often used with diacritic characters. We'll get to that in a bit. For now, I just want you to see that when I edit this C, the linked component in the G is edited automatically. I think I'd like to have a descender on this G. As I did with the C, I'll place a component of the J into the cell. If I try to move this J component, it won't budge. That's because its metrics is aligned to the C. By right-clicking, I can turn off the auto alignment and then move the J into position. I can then decompose this J, again by right-clicking and selecting Decompose. Now I'm ready to do some editing. I've sped up the video here, but frankly this could use more refinement. Regardless, I hope you get the point of how components can be used. We'll return to their use when we talk about diacritics. For now, let's talk about punctuation marks. Obviously, you can't have a good working font without them. But I have to stress the importance of having your punctuation consistent with the design of the rest of the font. Here I'm scrolling through the punctuation in the Categories panel. I'm going to select and create just a few punctuation marks. I'm speeding up the video here to show you how I create the period, comma, ellipses, and the exclamation point. It's a good idea to use a stem on another character to get the right width for the period. From there, you can copy and paste and create the other glyphs. If you haven't yet created punctuation, now would be a good time to work on them. So add these punctuation marks to your font before we return to part 2 of this lesson. You can always add more as necessary throughout the designing of your font. Once completed, return to part 2 of this lesson. Thanks for watching.